The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Wills.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. And I really want to begin by acknowledging the member for Holt, who has moved this motion, because it's so critically important. It's such a critically important policy area, and we know that in this government. That's why we're putting in place such significant reforms in response to the Australian Universities Accord to provide that cost of living relief for students and to make higher education better and fairer for students. That's what government can do, real outcomes for the students that need it. Now, we all value the importance of a good quality education. We understand that. Myself, as a son of migrants from Egypt, they escaped a region that was engulfed by war. Every day they told me, growing up, that education was so important to my future, that I needed to study, that I needed to do my homework, that I needed to get a degree to have a better life. And I received in Australia a quality education that gave me the opportunities throughout life and to make a contribution back. And frankly, education opens the door to opportunity. It is that key that opens that door, because it gives people an opportunity to actually fulfil their potential. Not everyone wants or can or would like to do a tertiary education, a higher education, but those who wanted that choice, there should be that opportunity, regardless of their background, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of whether they're a migrant, regardless of whether they're from the inner city or from the regions, or whether they were born in Australia or migrated here, regardless of their socioeconomic disadvantage. It's the great leveller of our society, education. And it's incumbent upon all of us, Deputy Speaker, who are fortunate to receive such an education, to make sure that more Australians are afforded these same opportunities. That is why the Labor government is wiping $3 billion in student debt for 3 million Australians, many of whom are young people who need that assistance desperately. There are young people who work in my electorate, at the checkout in Aldi in North Coburg, or at the accountants on Sydney Road, or at the reception at the Glenroy Family Clinic. These are people doing part-time work just to get through their studies. We know that experience, and the cost of living has squeezed these young people the hardest. With inflation at 7.1% last year and HECS payments indexed to this inflation, young people with debts of $50,000 would have been slapped with a $3,500 indexation cost. No more. No more. And I personally know many students who have attempted to pay their fees upfront rather than relying on HECS to avoid those sky-high indexations. This completely defeats the point of the HECS system. So no amount of sacrificed cups of coffee or breakfasts is going to make a difference when you've got such a mounting debt happening out of your control. That's why that student debt that is here is so important under a Labor government. It's here to stay. HECS loans will be now indexed to the CPI or the wage price index, whichever is lower, because if your wages aren't growing, your debt shouldn't either. There's also prac payments, Deputy Speaker. That's why we've introduced a Commonwealth prac payment for teaching, nursing and midwifery and social work students. Unpaid prac is something I've been concerned about for years. Hearing the stories of many in my community who have had to give up their paid work commitments in order to do unpaid placement, often quite far from home. That's not good enough. We know that there is a shortage of teachers and nurses in this country. The last thing we want is for students in these professions, in this stream, to defer their studies or withdraw altogether due to the increased costs involved in placements and their reduced capacity to do paid work. That's exactly the kind of wealth barrier that our government is committed to removing, and remove it we have. So the other thing, that's why Labor is also making sure there's fully funded uni-ready courses for these students. In fact, we want to do more than just remove barriers to education. We want to actively encourage and incentivise skills and training. That's why the Albanese government has set a target of 80% of the workforce having a tertiary qualification by 2050, and it's why we're fully funding uni-ready courses. That's going to help make sure all Australians have access to an affordable and a quality education. This is why it's so important, Deputy Speaker. Education is so much more than just a commodity to be monetised. It's one of the strongest tools we have to improve our health outcomes, gender equality, levelling people who have socioeconomic disadvantage. The cost of living has squeezed so many young people. And under this Labor government, young people will be able to pursue their studies without the dragon of indexed debt breathing down their necks. If you're a child of migrants, you'll know what it's like to have your parents say, no matter what you do, just please focus on your studies because we want you to have a better life. And not everyone can go to med school. Whether you choose to study at TAFE or get one degree or two, You should not face barriers that are insurmountable, because under a Labor government, education is an investment, not a liability.
Thank the member.